Hang up in here. Right. Wait. Hang up here.
Oh, okay.
Take the, just put over one of those bags.
Okay.
Another one on that screen.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, sir. Can you please state your name and DLC number for the record?
Miss Lottie Boyd, 205-418.
Mr. Boyd, my name is Miss Layton, and on camera with me, you will see my two colleagues, Mr. James and Miss Chrissy Coldfields, and we are the three parole board members who are responsible for conducting your parole eligibility hearing today. I don't believe you've ever seen a parole board before. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Before we start, I will tell you what the proceedings look like and what we will expect during the proceedings. First, we will go over the crimes in which you have been convicted of and the reason why you are before the board today. During this time, we will expect you to give us a detailed version of the crimes in which you have been convicted of. There may be times that me or my colleagues might want to ask you some questions in detail about these offenses. We will discuss your prior arrest record, any programs that you have done while you've been incarcerated. We will only go back 2 years on disciplinaries. We will discuss any programs that you have completed and how you think these programs may benefit you in the event that you are granted the privilege of parole supervision. Because this is an opportunity for parole, we will discuss your future plans. You may be asked questions like, where will you work? Where will you live? Do you have support in the community? How do you intend to maintain treatment? Those type of questions, okay?
Yes,
Once my colleagues and I have asked you all the questions that we want to ask, and we feel like we have enough information to make an informative decision, we will allow you an opportunity to address the board. At that point in time, if you have anything that you want to add to your hearing that you feel like is pertinent to our decision-making process, you will have an opportunity to do so. Once you address us, then we'll go off camera, discuss your case, come back and render a decision. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any questions about what I discussed with you before we begin?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so the other thing I need for you to understand is my colleagues and I, all of us, we have like 3 computer screens. We have lots of information. All the information that we need about you, any question that we ask of you, we already have the answer to. We've already looked at your case and fully before now, but they may not be looking directly in the screen when they talk to you. I may not be, but that doesn't mean that I'm not paying attention to you. I'm taking notes. They're taking notes. And so I just want to let you know that some of that might be going on as well. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
First, I'm going to read information that's on your residential record card. You can let me know whether or not the information is accurate or not. In the event that we find discrepancies, you need to discuss it with the Department of Corrections. The parole board does not correct residential record cards. I have you listed as 64-year-old Curtis Boyd, DLC number 205418. You are currently in medium custody at the Luther Lucky Correctional Complex, where you are serving a 44-year sentence after being convicted of trafficking in a controlled substance, first offense, drug unspecified, tampering with physical evidence, possession of a controlled substance, first offense, drug unspecified, possession of a controlled substance, first offense, cocaine, escape second degree, identified facility, rape, first degree, violent crime, sex crime, sexual abuse, first degree, sex crime, sex abuse, first degree, rape, first degree, violent crime, sex crime, sodomy, first degree, violent crime, sex crime, burglary, first degree, robbery, first degree, sexual abuse, first degree, sex crime, unlawful imprisonment, first degree, rape, first, violent crime, sex crime, burglary first degree, burglary first degree, assault second, non-family member, identify weapon. You have served approximately 14 years and 7 months of this sentence. You have approximately 14 years and 3 months remaining. You do not have any good time laws. You were released on shock probation on January the 15th, 2007, and returned as a violator on May the 2nd, 2011. You do not have any detainers. Does this information appear to be accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sir. As previously stated, we're going to first talk about the crimes in which you have been convicted of and the reason why you are before the board today. Now, what I'm going to do is talk to you first about your 2006 and 2007 charges, and then we'll get into the 2011 charges because it's so many of those, and we'll need to talk about those as well in great detail. So in 2006, you were convicted of trafficking in a controlled substance, first offense, drug unspecified, tampering with physical evidence, and possession of a controlled substance, first offense, drug unspecified. Tell us about your drug charges and like how long had you been involved in drug activity?
Well, at that time in 2006, I was married, and me and my wife had started having some problems. So I had moved out away from my wife, and I had been started selling drugs for approximately maybe around about 2 years around in that area. And first I was working and the money that I was making, it wasn't enough for me to take care of my daughter. I had a daughter, take care of my wife, and take care of myself. I just wasn't making enough money. So I started selling marijuana, crack, cocaine to make extra money so I could pay my bills. Basically, that's why I was. And at the same time, I was drinking alcohol. I was smoking marijuana. Those were the drugs that I also used myself.
Okay, so I would assume that the 2007 charge was a possession of a controlled substance, first offense, cocaine. Did you have that for your own personal use, or were you trafficking in drugs still?
I was still trafficking in drugs, ma'am.
You also have an escape second degree identified facility attached to that indictment. Could you please tell us about the facility that you escaped from?
I was in Louisville in Kentucky, Jefferson County, and they had carried me in the basement. And when they carried me in the basement, I had been drinking at night and smoking marijuana. So when they carried me in the basement and they opened the door and put me in the cage, and I ran out the cage and they caught me as I went out the door.
Thank you, sir. So I've heard you say that you had been trafficking in drugs and you also have been using drugs.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Boyd, would you say that you have a drug addiction?
Well, I said I smoked marijuana, and the other drugs that I was using, I was selling them. But that's the only drug that I ever used was alcohol and marijuana. So
what about being an alcoholic? When
I was on the street, because at one time I was on probation and parole when I got out on shock probation, so I had to report. So at that time, for that year or 2 years that I had to report, I wasn't messing with no marijuana because I had to come and report, you know. So, but I was drinking from time to time because of the things of life that I was going through. So I was smothering it kind of with alcohol and working at the same time. That's what that situation was.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we're going to get into detail about the 2011 offenses. And you know that there are several of these, and there are 3 victims involved in these crimes, and we want to discuss these crimes in full detail. So do you remember the detail? Now, I want to do it this way so you won't mix the details, okay? So I'm going to give you a date, and I want you to give me the detail of what you did with this victim, okay? And in order, if I need to refresh your memory, like I said, I have all this information in front of me, so I know exactly what I want to ask you, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So on August the 28th, 1994, you went to a residence on 1114 Cherokee Road. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us what happened at that address on that date.
Okay. I had earlier that day, I guess around about 3 or 4 o'clock that evening, I was at Cherokee Park. I normally go to park and play basketball. That's normally the exercise that I would do. So I was at the park at that time, and the young lady that lived at the address, I didn't know the young lady, but I seen the young lady at the park. So when I had left the park, probably like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, around that time, at that night, I seen her sitting on the porch. So when I seen her sitting on the porch, I ran up to her residence and talked to her, and I grabbed her, took her in the backyard, and made her have sex with me. I didn't know her name. She didn't know me. I just happened to see her at the park. And when I seen her at the park, we just kind of spoke and left it at that. And I was playing ball and they was watching. And so when I got ready to leave, like I said, I left from the park that night. And I guess she may have lived maybe about a mile from the park, the way that I went. And when I seen her sitting on the porch, I pulled my car over, got out my car. I went up there and started talking to her, and I grabbed her and took her in the backyard and made her have sex with me, ma'am. That's what I did with that situation.
Mr. Boyd, are you telling us that you did not follow her home to find out where she lived? You were just, but were you riding around the neighborhood looking for her?
No, ma'am. I was when I left from the park, when I left from the park, I was headed home. But the way I went, I seen her sitting on the porch.
Okay.
Now, I had never seen her before, but I'd go to Cherokee Park all the time to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I had never seen her. That's the first time I had seen her at all.
Okay, sir. I'm going to move ahead, but I might come back, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And then my colleagues might want to ask you something else about this crime as well.
Yes,
on February the 8th, 1997, you went to 1630 South 2nd Street, apartment 111. What happened there?
At apartment 111, in that area, that's where I was going and purchasing marijuana at that time. And I don't know the young lady's name, but when I went upstairs to the place where I was buying my marijuana from, I seen her walking around in the house. She was walking around in the house in her apartment, rather, not the house. And I seen that she had a bra on. That's what I could see, that she had a bra on. So and I went upstairs, the door was open, and I went in there and I made her have sex with me. That's what I did.
So
After
you were purchasing marijuana. Was it from this residence or from another residence, and you just saw her in the door?
It was in the same residence, but she lived in the building.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
She lived in the building. Okay. So you go in there and you force her to have sex with you. Did you take anything from that apartment?
No, ma'am, I didn't take nothing from the apartment, ma'am.
Well, the crime story indicates that you took jewelry from that apartment.
I understand that, but as I said here to tell you today, I didn't take nothing from it. Every victim, ma'am, whatever the report says, every victim, all three of them, I never took nothing from neither one of them, but made them have sex with me, and I left and ran out their apartment and left. Now, I never took no jewelry, no money. I didn't go through their pocketbooks or nothing like that.
Okay. Now, you did indicate that you didn't know her name, but let's go back to the first victim. Do you know her name?
I didn't know her name. I just seen her at the park. I didn't know her name.
Do you know any of your victims' names today? Do you know any of them?
No, ma'am. I don't know none of their names, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
On January the 9th, 1998, you went to 216 West Burnett Avenue. What did you do there?
That one's kind of, hard for me to remember on that one. But I do remember that I broke in a young lady's house there. I mean, her apartment. It wasn't a house, it was an apartment. And I did pretty much the same thing as when I broke into an apartment. I went in there and I made her have sex with me as well, man.
At any point in time, did you place a knife to any of your victims' throats?
No, ma'am.
You never placed a knife to any of their throats?
No, ma'am.
Go ahead.
The first victim that I did, that I told you that was at the park, and when I left, I grabbed her from off the porch with both my hands. I just put my hands around and grabbed her. So I couldn't have had a knife in my hands if I grabbed her off the porch. You know, I don't know what the paperwork says, but I know that's what I did. I grabbed her and I didn't have a knife.
When you grabbed her, where did you take her?
In her backyard. Only thing I had on was basketball stuff, tennis shoes. So I didn't even have no pockets for a knife or nothing like that.
And the second victim, do you remember what type of sexual activities you coerced her into doing? Forced her to doing?
On the second victim?
She would have been the one at 1630 South 2nd Street, apartment 111.
The only thing that I did, I had what you call it, just regular sex with her.
Mr. Boyd, can we please not say the only thing that you did? You forcibly made these women have sex against their will.
Yes,
we're not going to minimize their crime.
I'm not trying to, ma'am.
Please don't do that. So the third victim, did you put a knife to her throat?
No, ma'am.
Did you put a pillow on her head while she prayed?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
What I was trying to say about the second victim, ma'am, was that I didn't make her have oral sex. That's all I was trying to say. I had from my penis to her vagina, trying to explain it, and that was the only type of sex it was the only type of sex I had with her. Ma'am.
So you didn't perform oral sex on her?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I didn't perform oral sex on her.
What about that third victim?
The third victim? I don't remember, but I don't think I performed oral sex on her at all.
Well, where did your sodomy charges come from?
Ma'am, I don't know why they put sodomy in there, saying that I stole watches and jewelry. I didn't take no jewelry from none of them. Nor did I try to have sex with them in their behind.
Okay.
Do none of that.
Did you perform oral sex on any of them?
No, ma'am. I didn't perform oral sex on neither one of those women.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Boyd, why did you commit these offenses?
Back in the 90s, I was having a hard time in life. And I was married, and I spoke to you at first that I had moved out from my wife. Me and my wife was going through, because I had started a relationship with another woman, had a child by her. And as I had a child by this woman, me and my wife and our relationship just started deteriorating. So, and as I began to try to deal with my wife and deal with this other lady, everything was just falling apart in life. And since I couldn't, me and my wife, we couldn't talk. My little girl's mother, she didn't want to talk, because whatever we was going through. So I ended up leaving and just going out and going to parks and playing ball and just trying to have some time to myself to get my head together. And so I was just going through.
And when you were going to these parks and playing ball, you were seeing women and you were choosing to later go back and rape them?
No, the only lady that I seen at the park was the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that.
Yes, ma'am. The other two women, I never knew them. I never had met them at all. I had never seen them.
So if you've never seen any of them, you told us about the first one in the parks. How did you choose the other two?
The other two, ma'am, remember I had told you
About the marijuana.
Yes, ma'am. I had went up, this was an apartment complex, and I don't know how many apartments is in it. Might be in 5, 6, or 7. It's a big old apartment. And where I was going at to get the marijuana and the drugs that I was buying, that's where I seen this young lady at.
Okay, and the third one, where did you see her?
The third one, the third lady, I'm trying to think back. I'm thinking that on the third lady, I never knew her either. I just went over to that apartment complex. And when I went over, I seen her. And so once I broke into a crib, I guess she had went in there and went to sleep. And once I broke into a house, because I did break into a house, I'm not going to lie concerning what that report said. That was one that I did break into her apartment, rather. And she was in the bed asleep. And I went in there and I made her have sex with me. And that's what I did, ma'am.
Mr. Boyd, you know, it's really hard for me to wrap my mind around you not knowing anything about this victim, not knowing what was going to be awaiting you on the other side of that apartment, and you didn't know anything about her. I mean, you could have opened that door and a man could have came out. I mean, so it's just hard to believe that you didn't know anything about her and that you didn't previously watch her before you went in that apartment.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about just behavior within itself. And were you alone when you committed these crimes?
Was I alone by myself?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Because I had moved out from my wife and I had moved into a little apartment by myself. Yes, ma'am. So I was staying by
when
myself.
I was saying alone, I'm talking about, did you act alone? Was there anybody else that was participating in these activities with you?
No, ma'am. I was by myself, ma'am.
Mr. Boyd, one would think that this type of criminal behavior is either embedded in you or you're taught it. How did you learn to commit such brutal offenses? What was going on in your head?
Well, at that time, back in the 90s, 90 to 94, I was 34. So 34. Yeah, I was 34 at that time. And like I said, I was just having bad situations in my relationship with my wife. Not only my dad, he was older, and I was trying to take care of him, and I was just getting stressed out with the problems and stuff that I had bought on myself, and they was just wearing me down. Didn't seem like I had anybody to talk to, because it was kind of hard for me to talk to my mother, my dad, because my dad, he couldn't relate to me, because he had old timers, and everything was just falling apart. Basically.
So did you have a friend that you talked to?
The friend that I had was the one that I pretty much betrayed, which was my wife. That was the friend that I had. You know, I didn't really have a lot of friends at that time in 94.
94, 97, 98. Did you have any friends around that period of time that you may have been sharing with, or they were coercing you or teaching you how to do this type of behavior?
No, none in that era that was teaching me to do any type of wrong stuff. But I did have some people that I had started going to church with at like 90, 92. And once I had started going to church, I couldn't, the pastor, I was working with him and I was working together along with other brothers in the church. But, the mess that I had done afterwards, I couldn't go to them and talk to them about it,
Okay.
because I would see how they would look at me as, as such, an evil person. So I just couldn't talk to them about it.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please describe the impact that you believe these crimes had on your victims?
Yes, ma'am. I can't even, not only just the victim. I mean, they got parents, they got moms, they got dads. I don't even know if some of them had children. The women, they were middle-aged women. I guess they was anywhere between their 20s and their 30s, somewhere in that area. So I can only imagine that, as I went to the program SOTP, and in that program, it teaches us that when women, our men, happen to, these things happen to them, some go on in life to be successful, and some end up with drugs and alcohol, maybe even commit suicide. I don't know, man. But the only thing I do know that I could say, this is what I want to say. The man that's on that paperwork that was in the 90s is not the man that stands before you today. That's what I want to say. I'm not that same person.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. And you know what? I like to think about these parole board hearings when I am conducting them or taking lead on them as, we want to collect a story. So we do want to know who Mr. Boyd was that committed these offenses. And we do want to know who Mr. Boyd is today.
Yes.
And although these questions may be extremely difficult for you, we are going to get to a point where we talk about programming. Right now, I'm really concerned about the victims. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. So you will never have an opportunity to talk to any of these women, but you have me and my two colleagues on the camera. And if you had an opportunity to say anything to them today, what would you say?
I would say to each one of them that I'm sorry for the crimes that I committed. And I know it's not just against them, but it's against their moms, their dads, because most of them probably have families just like I do. So I just would want to say that whether they would believe it or not, I pray for them. I pray that God would restore them and strengthen them to be able to pick up the pieces, the mess that I created. So that's what I would say to them, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
And I hope for the best for them.
Were you under the influence of alcohol or drugs when you committed any of these offenses?
Yes, ma'am. When I would go to the park, I would drink beer and smoke some weed, and that would be about it, ma'am.
Okay. So let's talk about how these crimes came to the attention of the police, because there was quite a bit of time span between the time in which you were convicted and when the offenses actually happened. So how did the police find out about these charges?
I guess my DNA, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have no condom or nothing, no, ma'am. So I guess it was my DNA. That's what they told me. So
okay. Well, I don't have any other questions that I want to ask you about the offenses. My colleagues may want to ask you something, but I'm going to move on from there. And as previously stated, we will talk about these offenses, and then we're going to start talking about your prior arrest record.
Yes,
when
ma'am.
I'm looking at the information that I have in front of me, it looks like you had juvenile record of some sort. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood and why you were involved in criminal activity as a juvenile.
Well, I had moved from Glasgow, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in the country with my mom, and we moved to Louisville. I started the school at J-Town. I guess I was about 15, 16, around in there. And I ended up running with people in the street that I met in Louisville because I really didn't know nobody. I started meeting them. Some of us, we went to the same school. And some of them would go out and steal cars, and I would ride with them. And they may park the car, and I go get the car and ride a little bit, park the car somewhere. At some time or another, we also was, I also broke, I don't know how many houses I broke into at that time in different neighborhoods as a juvenile. So come from the country, moved to the city, and everything just changed.
Mr. Boyd, the offenses that you committed, they were violent crimes, and you're talking about this transition from the country to the city. I just have to wonder if you were angry or mad about something. Had you ever been sexually abused as a child? Any of that type of thing take place?
At one time.
At one time you were sexually abused as a child?
Yes, ma'am.
How old were you?
I was 9. I never told nobody nothing about it, though.
Is this your first time talking about it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, after the hearing, if you need to go talk to a therapist or something, because I realize that this could be pretty traumatic, make sure you let the people with Department of Corrections know that you might need to talk about it because you discussed it, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm not a trained professional and I can't help you through that, but I wanted to know if this had ever happened to you in any type of way. Who was your perpetrator, if you don't mind me asking?
It was my auntie.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do you believe that being victimized by aunt, a female, someone who you trusted, created some type of anger against women?
In somewhat, maybe a way. And then at the same time, my mom pretty much raised me. My dad wasn't there, so it was just a little bit angry towards him because he wasn't there either.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Boyd, these crimes happened in the more severe crimes, they happened in 1994, 1997, and 1998. Now, I want to tell you about what's really concerning to the board is that you had committed these offenses. You were walking around a free man. You knew you had committed these offenses, but you continued to participate in criminal activity. In 1997, you were convicted of a criminal attempt to commit burglary. Do you remember that charge?
No, ma'am, I don't remember that one. 97?
Okay. Yeah, you actually were trying to break in someone's home. Do you remember that?
I'm trying to remember it. I know I had a charge at one time that some people did say I was trying to break in their home, and I think I had got a lawyer or something, and it got dismissed or something. I'm not for sure.
It was amended to criminal attempt.
Okay.
And you got 12 months, and it was suspended for 2 years. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But you don't remember the offense itself.
I don't remember the offense itself. I just remember I had to get a lawyer because they said I had broken somebody's house or something. I remember that part of it.
Okay. In 2005, you were convicted of selling a controlled substance to a minor first degree, and you was sentenced to serve 12 months on that charge.
Okay.
And On May the 3rd, 2006, you were arrested. You get out of jail. You enter a guilty plea to these charges on October the 4th, 2006. And you were given a 7-year sentence for these. But while you were on, right after you entered a guilty plea, on October the 20th of that year, you were arrested for controlled substance. So while you were waiting sentences on other charges, you were convicted of something else.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's really concerning that you continue to participate in criminal activity, knowing that you had raped these victims and, you know, you didn't change your lifestyle in any type of way.
Well, when you look at the time that back in 94, 97, and 98, the time that you said that I had raped the victims. However, that time, from that time to the 2006, 2007 time, when I did start selling drugs, everything had changed from raping these women until now I'm selling drugs and trying to pay some bills but I wasn't. So that's almost over 20 some years, ma'am, that I did, even though I was having some issues, but I was trying to work on myself, even though I was having some issues.
Okay, well, I do, you know, Mr. Boyd, I understand that, but also during that time frame when you had committed these offenses, and even in 2001, you had several emergency protective orders. You had,
Yes.
and you had several with Beverly Boyd, Heather Paul, and Shannon Young. Who were those women?
Those are the first woman, Beverly Boyd, is my wife.
Okay.
Heather Paul is the lady that I have a baby by. So that's what I was talking about earlier when I was speaking about that.
The affair that you had.
Yes, ma'am. So now at that time, some things in my life did change because I had left Louisville and I started driving a tractor and trailer over the road because me and my wife wasn't getting along. So me and my little girl's mother wasn't getting along. So I decided I'm gonna go to school and get my CDLs and try to change some things. So I went to Indianapolis for a couple of weeks. I got my CDLs and came back. I started working for a company in Martin, Illinois, and I started driving over the road. I think I drove over the road for like about 3 or 4 years. And things did change in that era. I was able to take care of my daughter and my little girl's mother. She was a little bit more happy. My little girl, my wife, even though we were still going through things and dealing with things, but I was still able to try to support them and do what I needed to do positive.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's move forward because I told you that we was going to do a story. So now
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
moving on in our story and we want to talk about Mr. Boyd and what has been going on while you have been incarcerated. First of all, you haven't had any disciplinary since 2017. Even the disciplinaries that you've had in the past, which are only 3 total, you haven't had any major infractions while you've been incarcerated. You are to be commended for having good behavior, sir.
Thank you.
You also have completed several programs while you have been incarcerated. And these programs are offered by the Department of Corrections and are designed to offer you strategies to help you in the event that you are ever released from custody. I want to talk to you more specifically about the sex offender treatment program that you did. Do you realize that you have to be a lifetime sex offender registrant based on your crimes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What was your biggest takeaway from the sex offender treatment program that you feel like could help you in the event that you were granted the privilege of parole to never commit such an offense again?
One of the biggest things that I learned in SOTP, first of all, it was hard because my last year or so, I was in there with a lady, and it was hard for me to open up because of the things that I had done. And but what helped me the most was that I seen that it was a lady that I was speaking to, and this lady, because of what she had learned and what she had been through, it blessed me because I seen someone that was concerned about me and concerned about how the class could help me and how she helped me. And that was the most beautiful part about me being in SOTP. And not only SOTP, ma'am, all the programs here that I find myself going through, I find myself in programs with men or women that are concerned about people, and it makes a difference. To me, it does.
So we previously talked about you knowing that you have the victims and the impact that the crimes have had on the victims. But the other thing that we want to know as a board is what strategies have you learned? Because there's a mindset behind this.
Yes, ma'am.
And the board, we've taken an oath that we're going to protect the public. So that means that public safety is our primary concern.
Yes, ma'am.
Naturally, one of the things that we will be concerned about is whether or not we believe that there's a risk for you going back out into the community, finding other victims,
yes, ma'am,
and committing the same type of offense.
Yes, ma'am.
What strategy will you use to prevent this from happening?
Well, one of the strategies that I would use is to, I have 6 sisters. I have an older brother, and even my ex-wife, the one that divorced me, for these 14 years that I've been incarcerated, we have been communicating. And I can only say nothing that I've done, but I know that the Lord has restored our relationship and given her a heart to be able to sit down and we can communicate. And I call on the phone and we talk. So being able to have family that looks at you and don't point their finger at you because they see what you have done, is one of the most important support groups. I plan on going back to the church where I started at and doing what I'm supposed to do as being a man of God instead of at the first time in the 90s, that's what I was supposed to be doing. I had a calling on my life. I was supposed to be ministering to people, but instead I allowed the devil to drag me out into a mess and doing the opposite instead of doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I have a daughter that's 24 years old, and I have a granddaughter that's 5 years old. So my plan is to get with my family. I have 2 important things in life. Number 1 is to acknowledge my Savior, the Lord, and do the work that He called me to do. And number 2 is family. And that's how I see for the rest of my life. I'm 64. I don't know how long I'm gonna be here, but that's my plan, is to stay on that path, ma'am. That's my plan.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Continuing to talk about the programming that you've been in and things that you've been able to complete. I do notice, we talked a little bit about your substance abuse issues and that you at one point in time did complete the substance abuse treatment program. One of our concerns would be you've been incarcerated for a while. So in the event that you get out and you get overwhelmed, we absolutely would not want you to continue the path of where you go back to substance abuse as a means of covering up or, dealing with your problems. How do you intend to maintain your sobriety?
Well, in order to maintain my sobriety, first of all, I've been locked up 14 years, a little bit over 14. Now, ma'am, there's a little bit of everything that you want in different places in prisons. I done been in 3 or 4 of them. And you have to make a choice. You're either going to drink hooch, or you're going to smoke cigarettes, or smoke marijuana. I choose not to do none of those things. I don't want no more smoke in my body. I want to live for a while. I want to be healthy. I don't want to mess with alcohol. I just want to live and do those things that I know that I'm supposed to do. That's what, that's my desire. That's my desire. Alcohol, I'm glad that I don't even have a taste for alcohol. And I definitely don't want no smoke in my body whatsoever. So marijuana, like I said, that was the only drug that I ever used besides alcohol. So those two drugs, we're not friends no more. I don't want none of those drugs.
If you're granted parole, where will you live?
Well, my wife cares about me. And I pray about that situation because I said, well, Lord, here it is. This is what my wife told my older brother. I have an older brother. This is what my wife told him. He said, my brother called my wife and they was talking on the phone. And my wife said that I talked to your brother, and your brother said that, well, Beverly, I thought you and Lottie had got a divorce. And she said that we did get a divorce, but I still love him, So I would go back. My wife and I, we have two properties in Louisville that we purchased over the years. And so I would go back to 1233 Weller Avenue, where my wife lived, and hopefully we would get remarried and just live life from there, man. That's my plan.
Are you able to work, or will you draw Social Security benefits?
Ma'am, the first day I get out this door, when y'all open the door for me, my first priority is to go and apply for my driving license and try to see if I can get a delivery job around the city of Louisville, maybe working for Coca-Cola, Pepsi, if not them, Frito-Lay, or someone delivering around the city. I'm still able to work. I thank the Lord that I don't have no physical elements or pain. So yes, ma'am, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna get out and do something. I got nieces and nephews need to learn how to work, and so and it's up to me to be an example for them so they can see.
Mr. Boyd, do you have any mental health issues that we should know about?
At one time in life, back in the 90s, I did, but today, I don't. Today, my head is clear, and I'm just learning to, here in prison, in these places, you learn to deal with so many different people. So, and going to church, you take all of those practices that you learn and you apply them to your life, that you may be a better person. And hopefully when you look at yourself, look back maybe 5 or 10 years and see who you was, and now you look at yourself and you can see that you have got a little bit better, and you constantly working towards getting better, and you put yourself around people that you can draw from, that can help you. There's a scripture, and it says in Proverbs 27:17, and it says, iron sharpens iron, and a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. So that's what I've been doing since I've been here at Luther Luckett these 5 years, getting with different men that are saved and are not saved, and just trying to be a help to people, whether they are officers here, because we all still are saying, we all people, we all still talk to each other, so that's what I've been doing for these 5 years I've been here at this place.
Thank you so much, sir. At this time, I don't have any other questions for you. However, my colleagues may. Ms. Fields, do you have any questions for Mr. Boyd?
I do. Mr. Boyd, what type of relationship did you have with those that you were selling drugs to? Did you know them, or were they just passerbys? Or what kind of relationship did you have with your people you sold drugs?
Some of them I knew, and they would come in the neighborhood, around in the neighborhood where I live, and maybe some out a little bit. And they would come after I had moved out of the house with my wife. So I was living in the house by myself. and they would come in the neighborhood and they would ask me, did I know who had some weed or some crack or some coke? At that time, I wasn't selling anything. I was working every day. So, and as they kept, these people, all through the neighborhood kept coming to me. So, and I would send them to different people that I knew in the neighborhood that was selling those things. So after a while, I just kind of got tired. So I'm like, well, I need to be getting this little money so I can, pay my bills and instead of sending. So then I started smoking marijuana. So, and I maybe buy an ounce or a couple of ounces, and I would buy enough for myself so I could help other people that I knew. So I wouldn't send them out there in that situation to try to buy stuff, because can't anybody just walk up anywhere and buy drugs, man. You get robbed and all kind of mess happens. I done been there and it happened to me, so it can happen to anybody.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Talk about your victims for a minute. Did you wait for an opportunity? I know the one you saw her in her bra.
Yes,
Was it from the street that you saw her? Or
yes, ma'am. It was from the street as I was going up into the apartment of the other young man's apartment to get the marijuana and stuff that I was picking up. And as I was going upstairs, I seen her in her apartment, ma'am.
okay. Did you go in at that time, or did you wait for an opportunity?
I waited and went and got the stuff, the drugs and stuff that I picked up. And as I came out, I seen that she had got in the bed. And as I opened her door, and her door was open. It wasn't locked, it was open. And that's when the act happened, ma'am.
Okay. And then one other victim, the victim at the 1630 2nd Avenue, you fled the scene because a roommate came in? Did someone come
Yes.
in at that time?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And you stand firm that you did not have a weapon in any of these crimes?
At all three of these crimes, ma'am, I never had a knife. I never had no type of weapon whatsoever. It's impossible to grab a person with both hands and have a knife in your hand and for them not to get cut or you get cut. I never had a weapon.
Okay. And I read that your father was an alcoholic.
Yes, ma'am, he was.
Did you consider yourself an alcoholic?
At one time I did.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sir. I believe that's all the questions I have, Ms. Lathan. Thank you so much, Mr. Boyd.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fields. Mr. James, do you have any questions for Mr. Boyd?
A couple. Mr. Boyd, when Mrs. Lathan was interviewing you and she asked you to talk about your crime, you used, I think when you when you asked the question, you said on each time you did the act that you went in and you forced them to have sex with you. I'm asking you, what is that? What is the name of that?
What is the name of what I did?
Yeah.
The name of what I did is I guess you can say I went in and kidnapped them, and if I'm understanding what you're saying, what is the name of it?
What's the charge?
The charge is rape, sir.
That's right.
charge.
That's what you
Yes,
did.
sir.
You raped them.
Yes, sir. I did.
I think you kind of minimize it when you talk about trying to say that you forced them to have sex, but you actually raped them. You forcibly took.
Yes. Yes.
Something that's the most precious. That's the most precious thing that we have. One of the most precious things we have.
Yes, it is. And I'm not trying to minimize it. So I apologize. The last thing I want to do is make each one of those women feel like I didn't do what I did. I admit I raped each one of them. I did what I did.
Okay. Now let's talk about the impact that you've had on them.
Yes, sir.
That your acts had on them.
Yes, sir.
It's traumatic.
Yes, sir.
It will never end for them.
Yes, sir.
Never,
You're right.
ever end for them.
You're right.
They can't escape it. They have a life sentence of what you did to them. You have a daughter, right? You have a daughter, right?
Yes, sir.
You have sisters, right?
Yes, sir.
How would you feel if some man did that to your daughters and your sister?
I would be broken from it. Just like I know some of them are. I would be messed up about it. So
And you are correct, sir, when you said you impacted not just them, but their
yes,
families. They have daughters, they have sisters, they have husbands. You've affected a
yes,
whole lot of people by your actions.
yes, sir. I did.
Okay, that's all I have, Mrs. Lathan.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Boyd, before we go off camera and discuss your case, is there anything else that you would like to say to the board this morning?
Only thing I want to say is the man that did those things in the 90s, it's not the man that you see today. That's all I want to say, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And thank you for being so candid and discussing these tough questions with us. If
Yes,
you
ma'am.
will just remain seated, we're going to go into a separate room. We'll discuss your case, come back and render a decision.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Recording stopped.
Oh, Lord help.
Recording in progress.
Mr. Boyd, can you still see and hear me? Okay, I can't hear you.
He's on mute, I guess.
Can you say something now, sir?
Yes, ma'am. I
Okay,
can hear you.
you can hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Board, the board was not able to make a unanimous decision, which means that all three of us have to agree on the same thing. We weren't able to do that, so we're going to take this case back before the full board on Tuesday for a vote for the full board to determine what your sentence, remaining sentence should be. And
Yes.
then you'll hear from us first before it's released to, like, before anybody else knows. So, okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
Recording stopped.
You want me to send you up for a mental health referral? I don't know.
I'm good. So what do I do now? I just wait from what she was saying, get something from you or something, whatever they, or what they saying.
Yeah, either they'll send it to you or they'll send it to me. I've never.
That ends the first hearing. You guys can leave now.
Okay, while you are getting them out, I'm going to go to the ladies' room real quick.
All right.
Okay, Wednesday.
Help him, Lord. Help that man.